All right, guys. Well, happy Monday. We will go ahead and get this show on the road. Appreciate you joining us today. We're going to do a little bit of a different take on the market update today. I've had a few people make some suggestions that I thought were good ideas, and we might kind of put some sales ideas and sales tips and sales sharing within these calls. I've had a couple people even suggest that we bring on some agents and have like a special guest each week, talk about what's working in today's market. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, um, and I'm going to ask for some feedback from you guys as well. But I'm going to do a brief market update, and then I want to get into some sales tips and some things that we're seeing that are working. Give you guys some tools that I think will be effective. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And, there's oftentimes the saying, um, the best way to learn is to teach. And so for me, preparing for this every single week to talk about what the market's doing is actually very valuable for me, and it makes it easier to convey that information to customers. I think for all of us on the call today, that's something that we should all take to heart. The more we understand and can teach and explain something, the better we'll be at it. So, like for me, talking about the market and what the Fed's doing today prepares me for the rest of the week. So I want to make this a little bit interactive because I want all of you to be able to explain these concepts to your customers as well. I feel like the more you have a grasp of some of these things, the more it separates us from the competition. So, Duba, can you see my MBS highway here? Okay, so I'm going to ask questions and I'm not going to give the answers unless nobody knows it. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different. Okay, so here's our bond market chart. All right, so we had a nice little rally for a couple weeks, kind of starting in May, through the end of June, about a 6 week run. What happened, does anybody know, in this period of time here, late June, really more early July? That's caused the bond market to sell off a little bit in the past couple weeks. Okay, anybody know what happened? Okay, does anybody that works for Cross Country Mortgage know what happened?
Well, I'm a little bit
No,
of
the
Iran negotiations
What's that, Jimmy?
and the Iran negotiations and new Fed governor with his announcements and what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think probably as much of anything like the ceasefire, right? So, there's some hostilities overseas. We're arguing over the Strait of Hormuz. Is it closed? Is it open? So, if there's hostilities overseas, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, then what does that do to oil prices?
makes them go up.
Well,
Okay, oil prices go up, right? And what happens then to future inflation expectations? They
well,
likely go up as well, right? And what happens to interest rates? Probably up as well, right? And so all of this here over the past 2 weeks is really Iran related, just like most of the direction of rates over the past almost, 4 months now has been related to the conflict in Iran. Okay, here's the important number to understand. So this is about a quarter of a percent increase in interest rates here. Just like we saw like a 3/8 of a percent decrease in rates, from like end of May to 1st of July, about a quarter of a percent increase in interest rates the past 2 weeks. Okay. A quarter of a percent on a $400,000 mortgage, which is kind of like median national sale price ish, is $66 per month. Okay. So are most people either speeding up or delaying their home buying process over $66 a month if they're looking at a $400,000 house?
most people
Okay.
don't know it's only $66 a month. They just listen to the news and they think
Most
it's
people think a
hundreds.
most people think a quarter of a percent or an eighth of a percent is a heck of a lot bigger deal than it really is, right? And so I think what's important for us is to explain as you have ebbs and flows of interest rates, and we've seen a 0.5%, maybe a little bit more than that swing since earlier this year, what's the actual impact? But the big impact of war in Iran, higher oil prices, higher inflation, that 0.5% jump, that happened 3 months ago. That's been the market. We've been in a mid 6% more or less range for a couple months now. Um, these ebbs and flows we're seeing really since, here, like the end of March. So we had this end of February to end of March initial sell-off, but then after that, the bond market has been volatile, but within a tighter range, and it's been about a quarter of a percent up or down. And so how much does that affect our median nationwide average customer? It's about $66 a month. Now, first time home buyer, okay, lower price point. We talk about the difference between, K-shaped economy. We've talked about that term a lot. A $250,000 first time home buyer, $66 a month probably makes a big difference, right? And I know, like, for myself and every other loan officer on our team that's running numbers for people all the time, like we all have people that we're talking to that it's like razor thin margins, 25 or $50. And it's not that every one of us could afford 50 or $60 a month more. It might, like cause a lifestyle change, to be able to afford 50 or 60 bucks a month more or less. It's more of a mental block that they have. Like we have a lot of people that are very much like, I can't spend more than X per month, even 25 bucks a month more than that. It's just a more of a comfort thing. But for a $250,000 buyer, the difference in monthly payments $40. So, to a lesser degree. Um, but that's kind of what's happening in the market now is that you've got some tensions overseas. You've got the Strait of Hormuz. Is it closed? Is it not closed? Um, Later this week, we do get some big market news. So I'm going to pull up the calendar real quick here. We have the consumer price index, which is a big inflation number that comes out tomorrow morning. Um, this will probably come in hotter than prior months because that lag effect of Iran war, higher oil prices, that has a 2 or 3 month lag on inflation. So I'd expect an inflation number that's, in the mid threes, which is elevated compared to where it was earlier in the year. I feel like the market has already priced that in, and it probably won't be a big market mover unless it's an upside or downside surprise. But if you're in front of the TV tomorrow, Fox Business, CNBC, 8:30 tomorrow morning, that'll be released. That's a market mover. And that more so than like what's happening in Iran could make a major swing in markets, but it's probably going to come in around expectations, which tells me there's not going to be a big movement in interest rates tomorrow, but something for us to watch. Um, okay. Second economic topic I want to talk about is the Fed, because we do have a Fed meeting coming up here in about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from Wednesday, the 29th. Um, Expectations are the Fed, 65% of those polled, is that the Fed will keep rates unchanged. Okay. And we've talked about this a lot. And I'm going to do a video about this week. And I think it'd be a good topic for a lot of us. Um, but the next Fed meeting expectations are we're going to get a hike. So 51 plus 19%. So 70% of those polled think we'll have a Fed rate hike by the middle of September, 2 months from now. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions here. Generally speaking, if the Fed is hiking the Fed funds rate, are mortgage rates likely going up? Meaning, are the Fed and mortgage rates typically moving in the same direction?
No.
Okay, so Abby says no. Okay, anybody else got any answers? So, are the Fed and mortgage rates typically in the same direction? Okay, so this
Typically,
isn't
yes.
necessary. Okay, typically yes. You're yes, Dave. Okay,
Yeah.
so typically, I think it's yes. Generally speaking, longer term trend, if the Fed is hiking, mortgage rates are going up, and that's because the Fed is hiking as a reactionary move to slow inflation down. So think like 2022, right? The Fed was cutting, 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 all-time lows during COVID, 2020, 2021. They waited to hike a little bit too late. They were late to the game. Inflation started going up, interest rates started going up, the Fed started cutting, but the Fed was late. I think this time, if the Fed hikes, and I've mentioned this a few times, it could actually be good news for mortgage rates. And why would that be the case? Because the Fed would be acting more proactively than reactively. And I think Fed Chair Warsh is going to be a little bit more proactive than reactive than his predecessor, Jerome Powell. So here's what I think is going to happen over the next 2 months with the Fed cycles. You're going to hear a lot of what's called hawkish commentary out of the Fed in 2 weeks. Hawkish means you're going to hear people talking about potentially hiking rates fighting inflation. You're probably going to see more and more of the Fed governors that voting to hike rates this month. And we may get a Fed rate hike this month. There's still 2 weeks left for data to come in. But whether we get a Fed rate hike this month or not, you're going to hear a lot of hawkish commentary. I think that will set the stage for a Fed hike in September. And honestly, that's what we should all be rooting for. And that's kind of counterintuitive because typically a Fed hike means mortgage rates are going up. In this case, we want the Fed to hike because inflation has ticked up a little bit as oil prices have gone up. And especially if these tensions arise, the ceasefire doesn't hold, oil prices stay higher for longer, you're going to hear more and more talk of inflation fears. And is inflation going to creep back up? So we really want a Fed rate hike, even though it's counterintuitive. I think that's a really important message to start sharing today, because what do you think is going to happen to your clients that are very budget conscious on a razor thin margin? Any bad news pulls them out of the market. If they hear a Fed rate hike, which typically means bad news, it's certainly what the media is going to report. It's going to pull some people out of the market if we're not proactive in advance. And so for all of us, like those conversations with our active buyers and sellers, I think are good to have over the next 2 weeks, but especially over the next 8 weeks before September, which is probably when we're going to get a Fed rate hike. Um, and I think the more and more we talk about it, like start having those conversations now, because the more we have those conversations now, the better we get at them. The easier it is to convey these, these kind of counterintuitive terminologies and scenarios before it becomes reality. Okay, so here's what I wanted. I wanted to shift gears. So I had a few people that I asked, what would you guys think about having an agent come on these calls and share what's working with them? And a lot of people said, great idea, we should do that. If you guys think that's something that you guys would like to see, just message whoever you work with on our team. Um, Put it in the chat here. But if that's something that you guys have an interest in, let us know, because we've definitely talked to some agents that we work with that would love to and be happy to share. If there's specific things you guys want to hear, like things you might be struggling with, we can bring someone on that might have some words of wisdom or advice to help with those areas as well. I'm going to share two things with you guys today, and then we're going to kind of prep this. And if it's a direction people want to go, maybe take this in more of a sales focused call for the next few months as well. So here's two forms that I'm going to share today. And there's a coaching program that I'm in called the Core Training. They coach loan officers and realtors. And some of you guys have probably heard of it before. Dave was in the Core for a number of years. So some of these terminology may be new to you guys, but the Core is very systems and structured focused. And I think that's an area that a lot of salespeople, lenders, realtors, insurance, title people struggle with structure, because if we're salespeople and we're outgoing and we're out hustling and we're in the field all the time, it's sometimes hard to be organized and kind of keep to systems and processes. So I'm going to share two core forms with you guys today. If you guys would like copies of these, if they would be helpful to you, just message whoever you work with on our team. We will get these in your hands. But the first is called the Core Pay Log. Okay. And the pay log is basically a way to track future closings, i.e. future income. So I've just given two examples here. This is the July pay log, and you can see, there's tabs for each month. But if I'm in July, I threw in here, a closing on the 5th and a closing on the 10th, sale price, gross and net. Okay. I'm not sure what people use to track their commissions. I know most of the loan officers in our team don't really use anything. Um, but people who run successful businesses have structure and systems and processes and data, and they track their numbers. And so here's how I use the pay log if I'm a realtor. When I go under contract on with a buyer, I put them on the pay log prior to it closing so I can project my future income. If I sign a listing agreement and a listing hits the MLS and goes live, I put it on the pay log with maybe an expected future closing date, let's say 60 days out. But again, to project my future income. The challenges with both of our industries is we don't know what our future income is going to be. It's 100% commission, but unlike some 100% commission industries like insurance, for example, we don't get renewals. So Like my son is just got out of college. He's in insurance, and I encouraged him that that might be a good business to look at because over time, as you build it up, your income's a little bit more predictable. You have renewals of policies that are coming every year, whether that's home, auto, life, health, whatever the case may be, right? In real estate and mortgage, there's no renewal. There's past clients that we can work with over and over. People, we have referral businesses, but it's hard to predict. Um, so the way I would use the pay log is listing agreement or buyer under contract, plug it in the pay log. Um, we use like different color coding to kind of track what's closed and what hasn't or likelihood of closings. But the big picture is this is a great tool to use to predict your future income. Um, you could go so far as buyers that you have a BBA signed could potentially go in the pay log for maybe you put it 90 days out to kind of project future income. Um, and then at the bottom of this, and this is where I think it can be really valuable. So for anyone in sales, there's three ways to increase your income. You can increase the number of leads that you get. You can increase your conversion percentage, or you can increase your income per transaction. And down here at the bottom, so there's some averages. And so average sale price, average revenue per closing, gross and net, and then your sales commission average. So I plugged in like a 2.5% commission on a buy side, a 3% commission on a listing side was kind of what I was doing up here in this example. 2.705 is the average commission. So um, anyway, if this is something that you think would be helpful, let us know. If you guys need some help how to fill it out or some ideas, we can take it offline and do a separate call. But I feel like this is super valuable. A lot of the best realtors in the country that are in this coaching program that I'm involved with lenders and realtors, required to turn this in every single month. The second form I want to share with you guys is a form called the Greatness Tracker. And some of you may or may not have heard of this, but the Greatness Tracker is about as old school of a tracking mechanism as there is. In the old days, they used to call this like a call report, but it's a way to track your prospecting activity. And most people in sales do not spend enough time selling. Most people in sales spend too much time either with like non-productive busy work or meetings, or maybe operational things like maybe it's computer work, but it's not prospecting and selling. So phone selling, face-to-face selling, networking events, things like that. And so this form here, the Greatness Tracker, is a tool that we use, and there's different versions for lenders and realtors, but this is the realtor version. But to track your prospecting activity, and so it's basically having you measure each week what you're doing. So, how many face-to-face meetings do you have? A break bread would be like a coffee or lunch or a happy hour you might have attended. Um, Tracking your phone calls. So, like we track the number of people we call and the number of people we talk to on a daily basis. The number of events you've attended, the number of videos you've posted to social media. Um, this is kind of an old school lost art. So handwritten note cards. Um, just think about this. How many pieces of mail do you get per day? Okay, I was out of town for a couple days, just got back in late last night. Had like 3 or 4 days worth of mail, and there was maybe two or three things I got in the mail per day. We go back like pre-COVID, 7, 8, 10 years ago, you might have got 15 or 20 pieces of mail per day because all of the credit card companies and other marketers used to mass mail people. And that changed since COVID. And so I don't get that much mail anymore. I'm assuming most of you probably don't either. Most people are like online statements for your bank accounts, where that used to be mailed, online statements for your credit cards, that used to be mailed. So there's not a lot of stuff that comes in the mail. We feel like handwritten note cards are, hey, they've always been effective, but even more effective now. We're in a world where there's not a lot of people mailing stuff to your house. Um, so tracking the number of note cards you've written, and then leads, and then down here at the bottom is kind of like deals or contracts. So signed listing agreement, signed purchase contract, things like that. This middle section here is what we feel like is the most powerful on this whole form, and it's something called theme days. And some of you have maybe heard of theme days before, but it's basically putting structure to your business. So What do you do Monday? Like, what's your main focus? What's your main focus on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? Most people don't follow a lot of structure when it comes to prospecting, but those that are the most successful, that prospect the most, have some structure to their prospecting. And so for a realtor, um, on Mondays in the core, so you're calling your VIPs. And so who's a VIP? Um, it's your best vendor partners, it's your best past clients, it's influential business people. Um, so, like a client that owns a business, let's say you have a client that owns an engineering firm that has 50 employees, they could be a VIP, could be a great referral source. Um, Tuesdays are status updates on your in-process transactions. Wednesday is a great day to call your leads. Thursday, past clients, and then Friday's whales. And so, who could be a whale? A whale is a potential referral source that can send you multiple transactions per year. Okay, so think of family law attorneys, financial advisors, people like that could be whales, HR directors, um, if you guys feel like you would like to spend a little more time on how to use some of these forms or put some structure to your business or incorporate a little bit more sales in these Monday calls, let us know. We've got some feedback that people would like that. So we decided to do a little bit of that today. But if you like more of that, just kind of message me if you work with me or whoever you work with on our team at Cross Country. And we'll incorporate some more sales specific training on these calls. If you would like either of these forms, just message whoever you work with. We'll get them in your hands. And then last thing I've got, and we'll just kind of jump back into the charts here. So the market is a little bit off today. We're down 25 basis points. That was 10 basis points earlier. That's a lot of overseas kind of fear-driven tensions have risen. Um, the bond market has sold off to a degree that we're almost kind of where we were in May before we had that nice 30-day rally of a potential ceasefire. So hopefully this week we get a good inflation number tomorrow that is either at or better than expectations. Hopefully there's some dialogue and negotiations in Iran, Strait of Hormuz, that'll help inflation expectations. But that's the big driver right now. We had 30 days where it wasn't, and then the last week or two it's changed. So um, you're probably going to hear a lot of news of gas prices and things like that going up. So as you do that, just make sure we're getting in front of that and explaining to our customers in real world sense, $400,000 house, $66 a month, $250,000 house, $40 a month. Make sure we explain the real world numbers for people because it's not near the degree that people might think if they just listen to the media and hear what the news says. All right, guys. Appreciate you jumping on today. We will get you off a couple minutes early. Have a great day. Have a great week. Give us some feedback if you want some more sales related stuff, and we will see you guys next Monday. Thanks, everybody.